Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Lisa Flood. Lisa, please tell us where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Solmate Socks.
Hi, I'm calling in from Portland, Oregon,
Awesome.
where it's finally a beautiful and sunny day, which
Wish
is
I could say the same.
So company name is Solmate Socks. I am the part of the husband-wife owner team, and we are the second
Awesome.
generation owners.
Very cool. So I usually like to ask, how you kind of get into this space. So it sounds like it's generational. Your parents started this company. So yeah, tell me a little bit about, your journey since you've been involved with this brand. I mean, what kind of the big changes you and your husband did when you started taking over and maybe like bring it to a more modern kind of online digital age here?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes part into, of my involvement in the company, which started, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just start at the beginning. So my mother-in-law started the business, and she'd been a serial entrepreneur and a textile artist for many, many years. And she hand knit socks to give away as gifts. And she would knit one sock with a multitude of colors and patterns. And she never wanted to do the exact same thing again. So she would challenge herself to knit another sock that went with that first one that was mismatched but coordinated. So it was a mismatched mate.
Very cool.
And after doing that for 20 years and giving them away as gifts to friends and family, she decided to turn it into a business. And so that's how Solmate Socks was launched in 2000. And she found in her research to figure out how to take her hand knitted designs and be able to make them on a larger scale, she went to North Carolina and which is a textile hub for the US, and took some classes on sock hosiery mills and all that, and found a small family-owned hosiery mill that she could partner with that had the very specialized equipment that can make this. This is actually a very difficult sock to make at scale. So found that relationship. It ended up being great. And just as their business was they were seeing a lot of offshoring happening, our business was growing and taking off. So it ended up being, we ended up being the program, even though we were kind of a pain in the butt to make. We ended up being the program that ran through there that kind of saved that mill and kept it alive, which was fantastic. So that's that. Up to there, I will say my entry into the company was 2003, around there. My background was in e-commerce and marketing, so I had that coming in specifically, and helped her kind of start to figure out how to do more, like just kind of update the website, do more outreach and that. And then eventually, and I did that kind of on the side, and then eventually kind of came into the business full time with her to help really launch some more growth. And it was great. And she and I were fantastic working together. She was a wonderful woman that I loved working with her. And now she gets to be a full-time grandma because she retired in 2014.
Oh, congrats to her. That's awesome.
Yeah. So in 2014, my husband and I bought the business from her. She retired. Around the same time, the gentleman who owned the hosiery mill in North Carolina said, "I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm closing down." And we said, we still need to make these. So at the same time, my husband and I also bought the hosiery mill in North Carolina. So we run the brand from here in Portland, Oregon. And then we have a staff in North Carolina as well that is the production components, and that's what that is. So I came in full time in 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, and really kind of added a level of professionalism to the marketing and the branding, kind of brought it cohesive. It's still fun and playful, but I took some of the cartoonish aspects out of it that were early on aspects. It's always fun to go visit the Wayback Machine and see what the first iterations of the website looked like. And, then when, we became took over as owners, it was just kind of a continued path of that, and trying to, figure out our own path through how do we expand, continue, grow, continue to nurture, all that. So.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love that story. And I know you mentioned, your background in e-commerce and marketing. So obviously it's no small part of your business now. I mean, I see on the website, there's plenty of variety. So can you tell me a little bit about the kind of breakdown in 2024 here between what you're doing in any other channels versus what you're doing in e-commerce and direct to consumer that way?
Right. So our revenue is split about 2/3 B2B and then 1/3 direct to consumer. The front-facing part of the website that you see. And that the direct-to-consumer portion, we have been intentionally growing just to get more footprint out there. Footprint, no pun intended, with the sock company. Historically, the bulk of our business has been in the B2B channel. And, so we're just kind of diversifying in that. And, we're still seeing growth in both channels. The faster growth is happening in the D2C channel. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you don't mind me asking, I mean, as far as B2B goes, I mean, is it more of like a wholesale deals that you're doing? You're working with distributors? Are you doing any like private labeling? Can you kind of give me a little breakdown of, what you do on that side?
Yes, yes, and yes. We have historically primarily worked with a large group of independent retailers, not really big box, but that kind of independent Main Street retailers. The mom and pop shop has been our bread and butter, and where we really get a lot of joy from nurturing those relationships. Stores are going to have, most of our accounts have, from 1 to 10 doors usually is the average that we see. We do have some large key accounts that we work with as well. As far as the distributors, we don't work with domestic distributors. We do work with international distributors that we have
Cool.
international coverage in New Zealand, Japan, Canada, England. Those are the main ones right now.
That's awesome. And I'll admit the first thing I know when I went to the website, I mean, it reminded me of like I used to buy socks like this from like, Dick's Sporting Goods when I was a kid because,
Yeah.
you need these types of socks to be able to go skiing and snowboarding and stuff. So all those international places you mentioned, I mean, seem like, it's kind of a hub for that. So is that what you kind of find is your like, even in these local stores you work in, are they like, they don't, I know they're probably not necessarily ski shops or anything, but is that where you find your consumer base kind of mostly, buying this for that specific purpose or not necessarily?
These are not technical socks, I will say, so they're not going to have the technical features that like some of those, skiing socks have. I've always said that we're more of like an après ski sock than an actual ski sock. That said, I have run half marathons in the socks, but I'd like to think that my feet are probably, very well in tune with the socks. So I don't know that I would never sell them as a running or sports sock in any capacity. Our wool socks are a little bit more different. I think those actually have more technical chops, but again, it's not 100% wool. It doesn't have these socks don't have cushion foot or arch support, a lot of those technical features that you would find in a traditional technical sock. We are sold in such a wide variety of stores. It is fantastic for us. I see us in hospital gift shops, in general gift shops. I see it's in high-end galleries. We are in bookstores. We are in new age retailers. We are in garden centers. So it's a really diverse mix of customers on the B2B channel that we work with.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I guess, obviously, on the B2B side, you probably have some info about like, the types of stores you're in, could probably give you some insights into the types of people that are buying it and why they're buying it. But on the D2C side, obviously you get that, more like direct customer interaction. So like when you are selling direct to consumer, is there like a general trend of people that like you get feedback from saying they bought it for any specific purpose? I'm just curious. Yeah.
I mean, I have the customer demographics that, are there. I don't know that I don't know that I have feedback that they're buying it for a specific purpose. It's a considered a gifting item, but I find a lot of times people are gifting it to themselves.
Right.
It's a self-indulgent treat for themselves. A little bit of comedy on the customer demographic. So when my mother-in-law had been hand knitting these and giving them away as gifts, she had 2 teenage sons at the time. And so she was giving them a lot to teenage boys and that, genre of people. So she really thought that her core demographic was going to be teenage boys that were kind of into the skater scene because that's who her sons were. We are middle-aged women. That is our target demographic, complete opposite. So it's usually women that are, 30 and up is the like 75% of the sales. Now I will say that's 75% of the sales on the D2C side that we see. That said, I believe that there are more men that wear them. Every time I have encountered a man wearing them, he usually says, my wife got them for me. My aunt got them for me. So they're purchased by a woman and then the woman gives them to the man.
So there is that element of like, self-indulgence and gifting, but when it is a gift, it's usually you find it's women buying it for the men.
Or other women.
Right, true.
So I don't know that it's specifically women buying for men, but I would say that when men are wearing it, it's been gifted to them by a woman.
Gotcha. So mostly women buying for their partners irrespective, right? That's
correct.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the beauties, obviously, of having a DTC channel, even a small one, is just to be able to get that like a really in depth, like like niche down, understanding like who's buying it and why is always super helpful, obviously. So, but let me ask you, I guess I'm just curious, like on the DTC side, I know some of you said you're experiencing a lot of growth. What kind of channels do you utilize mostly, and where do you find the most success in driving revenue through the website? Whether it's social media or do you do any paid advertising? Where are you kind of finding the the most trending side of your marketing efforts having the most success?
Yeah, we do paid media. The biggest levers there are Meta and Google. and that's where we put a lot of focus. Amazon also, we do paid advertising there as well, and Amazon is probably one of the faster growing D2C channels that we're seeing with the best ROI on that one. Google is, the beast that it is, and Meta is great for new customer acquisition. The CPA on that is a little higher because it's all new customer acquisition
Right.
for the most part. But those are the big levers. We're also highly seasonal, and so we will wind down some advertising channels during our slower times of the year, which is right now. And then for the North American, which is our main selling region, the cold weather and Christmas are what create the largest spikes in demand. So we will probably ramp back up into other little places and do like smaller budgets on places like Pinterest as well, and bring some of that back in during our more peak season.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing a little bit, like the insights into like, where you're doing your ad spend and when, because I think a lot of people that come on the podcast, or just people I have conversations with, like you can't help but be seasonal sometimes, depending on the type of food that you're creating or the type of apparel. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important for people to know, sometimes you just have to like kind of lean into that, like spend the money in the busy times to do the most you can. And just like, take the opportunity to maybe try some new things out, and maybe the slower season where you're not, worried about like fulfillment because it's so crazy and busy in those times, right? That's really interesting.
Q2 is usually when we find that we're taking on special projects to,
right,
improve, change up, do whatever it is to, so that we can, hit the ground running more in Q3 and particularly Q4.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I wanted to ask you too before I meant to follow up on something that you said. So I'm curious to know kind of the process of that goes into creating these socks. I know you said it was a very specific textile mill that you worked in North Carolina. What makes that process a little bit different than maybe most textiles or socks that you'll find out there?
Well, the design, I do the design. I work with, different colored yarns. Our yarn is recycled. So I work with a specific palette that is available to me of recycled. So when a sock has like a pink yarn in it, that is essentially yarn that's been recycled from pink t-shirts that are, scraps. So our yarn maker has an agreement with cut and sew shops that, all the scraps that kind of come from making t-shirts, he collects those, he grinds them down into raw cotton and then spins it into new yarns for me. So with that, the palette is, it's a good palette, but it is limited. So I work within that palette and I do the design down to the stitch and figuring out where the colors and stitches go. As far as the uniqueness of the equipment that can do it, so there's a lot of color and pattern in this. And so the ability of the machine, it has to be able to carry two colors in a section. Ours have, if a hand knitter was doing this, you could put as many colors as you wanted. These machines can only do two colors. They also need to be able to switch between colors and patterns. And our machines also can do both what's in hand knitting, a knit stitch and a purl stitch, which is essentially an inside out. And that's what
interesting. Okay.
These kind of solid bands are purl stitching to kind of replicate that. This is also knit on a lower needle count machine, which kind of the lower number of needles, the thicker the yarn, and that allows it to emulate more of the hand knitted patterns. Most socks out there are going to be on much higher needle count machines, and that's what gives it kind of that, like, it's a much thinner yarn, and it gives it that kind of finer finish to it. But ours are really meant to be true to hand knitted patterns.
Yeah, I could definitely see that now that you mentioned. I mean, it's for sure, you could tell the difference almost right away, even looking at it over Zoom. I mean,
yeah.
You get your like regular Nike socks or anything else. I mean, it's just like there's no space between at all. I mean, it's just tiny, thin,
super
little yarn,
tiny,
just millions of them. Yeah, yeah.
And then when it comes off the machine being knitted, because there are all of these color and pattern switches, there's actually quite a few threads from when the machine is switching between those colors and patterns that need to be dealt with. And so all the socks go through a hand finishing process where all those threads are worked from the outside back into the inside.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. And as far as like the recyclability and sustainability kind of, side of the business, obviously is very sustainable using recycled threads, recycled yarn. And was that something that your mother-in-law had like a big interest in when she started? Was that the kind of thing she was using, or, what kind of led you to wanting to do, have this like very sustainable side to the business?
Yeah, no, that initially when we started, the first socks that she knit were actually made with merino wool that she imported from, I believe, Australia or New Zealand. I forget which one. And so because that is that's a high-end fiber for hand knitters to work with. And so that's what she wanted to do in translating her hand knits into the more highly produced ones. But they were wool. And back in the early 2000s, I think there was still the misconception that wool was itchy, even when it's
Mm,
merino wool, which is not itchy at all. And so she kind of fought getting the product to be accepted a little bit more, particularly on a year-round basis. So she worked with a yarn supplier who said, and he's just like, here's a color palette of some, some yarns that you can work with. And she said, great. And then when I started working with her, I was really pushing her. I was like, we should get organic yarns in here. Let's really, one of my personal passions is the environment. I'm in the middle of hippie country here in Oregon. So it's, that's a personal passion of mine. And eventually, I just kept kind of pushing the organic because that was, in my radius of awareness. And then she's like, well, they're made from recycled yarn. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? This is a huge, unique selling point. So so she started in 2000 with everything being the merino wool. In 2003, she launched the cotton, which went over really, really well. And then it was around 2007, 2008 that when I finally learned that it was made from recycled cotton, that we really started to put that out there as one of the unique selling points. And it was really fortuitous because it was, around the same time that we really saw a lot of demand grow for the sustainability. That's when I think that as a trend, or just not a trend, because I don't want it to be a trend, but as an awareness of the importance of it really started to take off. And around the same time, there was a new awareness of the importance of like buy local, kind of support American manufacturing. And the fact that we were made in an America product also drove a lot of new customers to us as well. So we had two unique selling points just already kind of cooked into who we were.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And I mean, the sustainability side of things, obviously, millennials, Gen Zs is like one of the most important things, whether it's food or textiles. I mean, I think everybody's looking for that now. And of
But we've
course,
had it covered
and like,
for
I
years.
agree with you. It's like, it is kind of trendy to be sustainable now, which is good because it like, it draws people to want to, do that and understand that it's almost a necessity for like new and like, upcoming consumers in these
Yeah.
generations. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely more like rooted in like general awareness and just like open dialogues about the topic. You really think of a trend, it's like, oh, trends come and go so fast. Like we don't want that to happen. No,
Yeah.
we want this to stick. And I think it has been, and I think you can see. I mean, obviously, as from probably your general consumer base that you do D2C and otherwise. I mean, it is a unique selling point, and especially with something like this, is socks are just such like mass produced things. You don't even think about where it comes from. It's just kind of a thing you see somewhere and pick it up. But yeah, so it's obviously super important. And so tell me, I guess I'm curious. I know you said yes, yes, and yes to my question about private labeling. So do you do any of that? Do you have any B2B channels that operate through that as well, or?
Well, because I own the hosiery mill, we do private labeling. So when I bought the hosiery mill, we were the only program that ran through that. And so as part of my desire to be more than a one-legged stool, I'm big on diversification of that just to strengthen that business. That team in North Carolina, we grew that team and had them focus on bringing on more customers. So we do private label, and we've invested in equipment so that we can knit more than just these socks. So we do a wide variety for a wide variety of customers that are not just us. If someone wants to do something through the Solmate brand and have it kind of be co-branded or do an exclusive product, then I work with them on that design, and it's going to have this look and feel to it. I'm not going to make this and put someone else's label on it without acknowledging that it's mine. But,
Right.
I've definitely done custom designs for people and exclusive designs. And then for the private label, that's really more on the factory side of things. It's not through the Soulmate side, but it's definitely something we do a lot with a number of other both large and small brands that are out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's across industries, I think it's an under leveraged kind of revenue channel for a lot of, brands that are looking to grow, looking to diversify their channels of, driving revenue. I think it can just come from a little bit of like, like that's my baby, it's my idea, it's my business. Like, I don't want to give the recipe to anybody. I don't want but it's so funny whenever I ask, somebody who does do it, some type of private labeling. And I'll say your situation is unique because you own, a manufacturing facility. And most people are not in that specific boat. But yeah, I mean, I think when the partnerships are right, it's a really great way to get some passive revenue channels with your brand. So I think it's important for people to know that, that there's good opportunities out there. Like not everybody is trying to, rip you off or steal your idea or do anything like that. Like there's real like valuable partnerships out there for that channel.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I guess just a couple more questions I have. One that I always like to ask everybody that comes on the podcast. You've obviously had, tremendous success with this brand. It's been, well over a decade now. So since at least you bought the business, I suppose. And so everything you've learned up to this point since, you started it within 2003, bought the business 2007. If you can go back and give yourself one piece of advice, business, personal, whatever it might be, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
Oh my gosh, the lens of hindsight is always so crystal clear, where it feels like you're kind of walking through fog banks when you're in it. I don't know that I have one piece of advice that I would give. It's going to sound awful, but I think sometimes I've been too kind and caring to people. I've had some amazing people that have worked with me and have bent over backwards to keep them with me, and have been really grateful for the people there. And sometimes, those relationships have lasted a little too long, but it's overall, like, that would probably be making sure that you have the right butts in the right seats at the right time is something that I can always see better through the lens of hindsight.
No,
But
it's
I've
fair
been
enough. And yeah, sorry,
incredibly
go ahead. Yeah.
lucky to work with some fantastic and intelligent and truly just kind, wonderful people. Um, every single one of them. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's actually a really unique answer. It's not one I've heard before, other than a lot of times what I'll get is, people come in and say, like, don't outsource too much to the operation, like right away. Try to get an understanding at least of what you're doing and do it on your own, so that when you do go and outsource it, you can have a
Mhm.
clear picture to paint for somebody else who's going to be doing work on your behalf. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of a similar answer, whether it's outsourcing work, or having people on like your actually employment team doing things. Yeah, no, I think it's important. Like it's remember, it's just business. Those relationships, like, they're probably not going to crash and burn entirely just because, like, maybe the business relationship doesn't work out. So it's
Yeah.
fair enough. And I think it's something important for people to understand. Just be maybe a little wary of that. Try to do the
Yeah.
right things, but you're doing the right things for the business is what's the most important as a founder of a brand, obviously. So
I think some of it, like, there's a great motherly sense in me, and wanting
mm,
to take care of everyone. And
right,
sometimes, having to differentiate the needs of people versus the needs of the business has been one of the bigger struggles of my own path, is learning, as a business owner. So that's probably the better clarity on that answer. One of the other things that, I would get, with the lens of hindsight, I would go back and change, is that, so with the type of store that we typically work with, they really like exclusivity, geographic exclusivity.
right,
So we do what's called a territory protection policy. And, early on, when my mother-in-law instituted it, she would divvy it up by zip code. That always bothered me, because sometimes, a zip code in Manhattan could have, you can't have just one account there. Like, you
right.
should have 10 to 20 in Manhattan in one zip code, if not more, but in a rural area, it can be quite different. So we have had to kind of walk a path of figuring out what is the best way to ensure the products stay unique within a store without cutting ourselves off from more sales. So from a consumer product goods standpoint, in that manner, that's been a learning process that we have kind of gone through many different iterations of. And I think what we have now works the best for us, in making sure that we're not opening 3 stores next to each other that have the same product, but doesn't stop us from being able to, have a little bit more market penetration in certain geographic regions.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I think that's like, even if it's not something that maybe is even a particular ask from your B2B to relationships. I mean, that could be a tremendous point of value for you to come in and say, if you're looking to like get more B2B relationships as maybe a more growing brand, to say like, hey, like we have this thing. I've not actually heard anybody mention that that's something that they do. I think that's something that could probably be valuable to other people trying to nurture those relationships. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I'm happy you shared that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pretty common thing in the gift industry that I'm in.
Mm,
So, the gift industry is really where we have found our best success in working with kind of that, larger, like, think of the category of just gift shops. And so that they are trying to curate unique offerings to their customers. And you might have 3 gift shops in close proximity, and the savvy buyers and owners of those stores know that they need to have a unique offering to their customers in order to stay relevant in their community. And so it's that, being able to curate unique offerings, and having that exclusivity. A lot of times these buyers are also, investing quite a bit in finding new lines to carry. They will travel to trade shows, which are inexpensive for both buyers to go to as well as for exhibitors to go to. And so when they do that investment in finding a line and kind of bringing the inventory in, they want to make sure that it stays unique to them. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. That definitely makes sense. And I just want to give you an opportunity as well before we go to, just let everybody know how to stay in touch with the brand. Like, shout out your website, your socials, anyway. Just the best ways to people to get in touch with you specifically, but also just keep in touch with the brand as well.
yeah, the main socials that we're on are Facebook and Instagram. You can find us there just by searching for Soulmate Socks. Our website is soulmatesocks.com. We are spelled a little weird. It's SOLMATESOCKS. If you can't spell that, if you just go to socklady.com, that's much easier to spell, and that redirects you to Soulmate Socks.
Awesome. Love that. Well, Lisa, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to chat with me today. It was an awesome conversation. I really appreciate all your insights, and I wish you nothing but continued luck and success. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everybody.